Hereby, I open this academic ceremony at Maastricht University. First of all, I welcome Mr. Santiago Hors-Fraile. He will defend his thesis, Health Recommender Systems for Behavior Change, exploring their potential for smoking cessation. And I welcome all the members of the degree committee, and in particular, the 4 supervisors. And the supervisors are Professor de Vries, he is Professor of Health Communication at Maastricht University. Dr. Schneider, she is Assistant Professor in Health Promotion, also at Maastricht University. The co-supervisor, the 3rd group of supervisors is Dr. Fernandez Luque, Honorific Assistant at the University of Seville, España. And Dr. Sivit Balcells, he is Professor of Department of Computer and Architecture and Technology at the University of Sevilla, España. And of course, I will introduce the opponents, but later on during the ceremony and during the opposition. And of course, welcome to the audience and the followers of the live stream. Welcome to you in particular, the listeners and viewers in Spain. Mr. Hors-Fraile, may I ask you and invite you to give a summary of your thesis? Please go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. Dear Pro-Rector, dear members of the Corona, dear family, friends, and audience. In the coming 15 minutes, I will present a summary of my research entitled Health Recommender Systems for Behavior Change, Exploring Their Potential for Smoking Cessation. But first, let me explain you why I wanted to do this thesis. I've always wanted to help people quit smoking because it's a harmful habit that can lead to many conditions, such as cardiovascular problems, COPD, many types of cancer, among many others. However, we are all different, and the suggestions, the tips that can benefit us will differ among each other because we all have different lifestyle, different contexts, and also different interests. So, given my background in software engineering, I wonder whether a subtype of artificial intelligence, recommender systems, could help to solve this problem. A recommender system is a piece of software that can create personalized selections of items. This has been extensively used in the leisure and e-commerce domains for years, with examples of Netflix recommending movies, Amazon products to buy. But I wasn't aware of their usage in the healthcare domain. So that's why I structure my research as follows. First, I conducted a state-of-the-art analysis. Second, I proposed a system, a recommender system, aiming to cover some of the gaps found in the previous analysis. And finally, I tested that system and assessed its impact. So let's begin with the analysis, the state-of-the-art analysis. For that, I conducted a literature review of nearly 900 studies of scientific publications, of which 19 only made it to the final step that met our eligibility criteria. And to facilitate this study, I created or proposed a taxonomy for health recommender systems, as we needed to classify all the findings of these studies. In this taxonomy, I proposed 4 different dimensions, and let's go one by one. The first one is the domain of application. That means where the study of the publication was conducted, the country of the intervention, also the therapeutic area and the population. Those elements were analyzed in this dimension. So what I found is that there was a very limited variety in the research that was conducted in those areas, in these elements. The second dimension of the taxonomy was the methodology and procedures of the interventions. And I noticed that based on the literature that we reviewed, there was a lack of reported results. There were very few experiences with real patients, and those that did have patients had a limited number of them. And that led that it was the impact of those studies was very, it was unreported. We didn't find evidence. And some others were just purely theoretical approaches and descriptive of algorithms that didn't contribute to find if they were effective or not. The third dimension of the taxonomy was related to their technology. Here, I found that the proposed systems had a limited profile adaptation techniques. Also, the patient feedback systems were also a bit constrained, and the generation of their user profile was done in a manual fashion. Also, there was a terminology misconception, meaning that some systems were classified as recommender systems or health recommender systems when they shouldn't, because they didn't fall within the traditional consideration of their features. And finally, these studies had a lack of details in terms of the implementation of this system, so we couldn't replicate them. However, the most surprising finding was related to the fourth dimension, the one related to health promotion theoretical factors and behavior change theories. It was totally unreported. So I thought that this was a suboptimal approach. As with any human intervention in healthcare, we should include such elements. And that's why I proposed a health recommender system, more specifically to support people remaining abstinent from tobacco. And I did it as follows. I used a very well-known behavioral change model that was previously used for also explaining human behavior in smoking cessation. That was the integrated model or I-change model. This model has determinants of change that were included in the logic, in the business logic of the algorithm itself, but also in the items, the motivational messages that were going to be sent to the smokers, so to support them staying smoke-free. Taking a closer look to the message design, I came up with a total of 331 different messages. And each of these messages, of course, addressed different topics for supporting smoking cessation. Not all of them were going to be sent to the smokers, only a fraction, but each smoker will receive a different combination of these messages. Each of them had unique elements that we call meta features. In total, we had 58 meta features that we could group in these four categories for the demographics of the target user, the user social context, their smoking habits, and also the I-change, determinants of change that were included in the message design. Then the recommender system algorithm itself was proposed as a two-step algorithm. And let me explain to you a bit more deeply here. So in order to come up with the best message to be sent, we first went into two steps. The first step, that is also known as the knowledge-based recommender system, it's or aims to have a match between the user profile meta features and the messages meta features, so that we filter all the incompatible messages for each user. That means that at the end of the first step, only compatible messages with the user will remain. However, we don't know of that pool of messages, of that subset of messages, which one is the most suitable or most relevant one for our target user. That's where the step 2 takes place, and it's known as the demographic filtering or collaborative filtering, more generically. Here, the algorithm, what does is is based on the principle that what was useful for other similar users will also be useful for me. So based on the previous ratings of messages of other users that shared a similar profile and the demographic profile and user history of ratings, we could infer what would be the most interesting and appreciated message for our user. Finally, to close the loop, our user will rate the message between 1 to 5 stars through a mobile application where the user receives the messages. So this system was then piloted and assessed for 3 different elements or metrics: the health outcomes in terms of smoking cessation, the engagement, and also the appreciation of the messages. But this was done within the European project Smoke-Free Brain as part of, it was the 3M4chan intervention with key partners such as Salud Media Labs, the Taipei Medical University, and of course, the University of Seville. The intervention worked as follows. First, users could discover the mobile app in their Google Play or App Store. They freely downloaded the app, installed it in their phones, and completed their profile, like a signing process in regular apps. Then, after that, they started receiving the messages selected by the recommender system, and they will rate feedback. They will rate the messages, feedbacking the system so that it learns more and more about the user preferences. The study design was a randomized controlled trial where we managed to recruit 371 participants, and we grouped them in the control group and the experimental group. For the control group, what we did is to send messages that were compatible with the user as well, but without including the collaborative intelligence component. For the experimental group, we included the 2 steps that we saw previously so that it's the full system. We followed up these participants for 6 months, and the different metrics were assessed as follows, with self-reports abstinent questionnaires for smoking cessation status. Then for the message appreciation, we used the message ratings in the as you can see in the screens, they could be rated with stars. And then the engagement with the system was assessed with the in-app usage by tracking the behavior of the usage, the behavior of the user within the mobile app. The results that we got were, well, the ones here presented. We found equal results in the abstinence rates that were around 10%, which is double quitting cold turkey without any support, but still not optimal as compared with other interventions that were done previously. Also, the message appreciation in terms of ratings that were around 4 stars out of 5 possible ones, and the number of rated messages. The experimental group, however, did got higher quitting attempts, but only when user profiles were completed, because they could leave that user profile partially done if they wanted. And finally, the control group did have a higher number of days using the mobile app and higher number of abstinence reports. And in all cases, those users that completed their profile fully had less dropouts, which makes sense as they were more engaged with the system from the very beginning. So the practical implications of all this research is that now we have a better understanding of how to design and use and also assess health recommender systems in interventions for behavior change. But this is done from a multidisciplinary perspective with the software engineering component and also the health promotion and behavioral science part altogether. But the full potential of recommender systems is not unleashed yet. There are many things to be done in this field. We may have to improve what I have proposed in my thesis with new data streams, with new sources of, like for instance, using wearable devices to have the physical activity data, and also the sleep quality, which may be relevant to recommend things for users. Also, we may try other behavioral change models, right? Also in other therapeutic areas. It's not only limited to smoking cessation. Changing the algorithm parameters, for instance, the way that we calculate the similarity among users for that neighbor term that is used, all the similar users. The delivery methods, maybe the mobile app is not the most convenient one, and we need to use other non-tangible devices or interfaces. And the message creation process that was quite tedious and a manual process, maybe optimized as well with natural language processing, for instance. So thank you very much for your attention. I give back the word now back to the prorector.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hors-Fraile, for your clear presentation. The opposition will be opened by the chair of the Dissertation Assessment Committee, Professor Kramers. He is professor in health promotion at Maastricht University. Professor Kramers.
Thank you, dear candidate. My compliments for the work that you have done in the previous years. It's very innovative, and I think you did important exploration work in this field of research. So this is very important to make progress in the field. I also have a couple of questions next to these compliments. And my first question relates to something that you did not touch upon in your presentation, and it didn't get much attention in your thesis, but you have tried to assess physical activity along with demographics, motivational factors, and smoking outcomes. I'm interested in your reasons to do so. So why did you actually want to measure it in the first place? And what were your hypotheses around the importance of this particular behavior?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much for your question. Actually, that was one of our first thoughts to use physical activity, to use the physical activity levels as part of the recommender system. That was something that in a similar study that I conducted in parallel was attempted. The reason for not including it here was a technical reason. And in order to collect such data, we can rely on either asking the user about, did you went for a walk for 30 minutes today? That's okay, but that will add an extra burden on the users for having to complete additional questionnaires. So the other approach will be definitely to use some types of wearables, or maybe the Google Fit or Apple Health Kit that tracks automatically the physical activity levels. So we had a challenging experience, let's say, with the previous implementation, as the APIs to call these services to retrieve data were changing constantly. That led us to lose data in other studies, as we couldn't keep up with the resource available, updating the mobile app at any time. So that's the main reason for why we excluded it, so that we didn't spoil, let's say, our system with corrupted data or with empty data. I think that in this regard, it will be now that the usage of these systems and also the wearable devices is much more stable. And now it will be the time to have it done with a more mature technology.
Yeah, so you elaborated on why you excluded it, but my question is, why would you include it in the first place?
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, there are, it is known that physical activity can help to reduce several factors of the cravings, also the anxiety that is related to having the abstinence period for smoking. If we can send, for instance, motivational messages suggesting going for a walk, and then we can track that the user actually went for a walk, then first we can feedback saying compliments for doing that, because it's always positive for you, but also we can see if later on in the process the user will benefit from that.
So you would also include it as a motivational or intervention input, because I thought I read in your thesis that you were actually planning to use it in your analyses as some kind of correction factor or confounder, but you actually initially wanted to include it as part of the messages.
Yes, as part first of the similarity computation for detecting if two users are similar or not, also as part of the messages, and then the consequence is that will be considered a meta feature that kicks in the system, and it's part of it.
Yeah, okay. And then maybe taking into account, you know, the limited effects that your intervention had, you didn't incorporate this particular issue as one of the potential reasons for low effects. But in hindsight, wouldn't it have been a very interesting and influential factor when you would have succeeded to incorporate physical activity in smoking cessation programs?
That's totally right. I think that the fact that we couldn't have more data points and variety of data points, including, for instance, physical activity, has limited the potential analysis that we've done. And that's one of the reasons that I think that that was reflected, maybe with other words, in our study, that let's say the variables for differentiating each user were not the proper ones to find differences in the behaviors.
Okay, so that's another area for future research, right? Thanks a lot for your answer, and I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kramers. The opposition will be continued by Professor Sevillano. He is Professor of Computer Architecture at the University of Seville in España. Professor Sevillano.
Thank you very much, Director. First of all, I would like to thank for the opportunity to be part of this committee. My overall impression about the thesis is very, very good. I like the selection of the papers. I think that the compendium is very, very coherent. The approach followed, the methodology is very, very correct, and I think that the quality of the papers presented are high enough, more than enough, that to be presented as a thesis. So that's my first comment about this. My questions. First of all, is I would like to know what exactly was the role of the candidate in the European project, because if I understood well, the thesis was developed as part of this larger European project, and I would like to know what was exactly your role in the project, and what different outcomes of the project could enrich or complement the results of this thesis. Could you elaborate more about this, please?
Hello, esteemed opponent. Thank you very much for your question. Yes, in terms of the European project, I was leading one of the work packages that was related to the design and implementation of the mobile application that we finally put in the hands of smokers. That's of course we always as a university collaborated with other European partners, but my focus was on leading that work package and make it succeed. And regarding the second question is what can we learn from the other things in the European project? So I think that one of the most relevant things is that in that other parallel study that was also for smoking cessation with recommender systems, with an earlier version that is mentioned in one of the papers included in my thesis, is that they were the recruitment was done in a different way. It was done in a hospital where healthcare professionals introduced the solution to patients. And also it was combined with pharmaceutical treatment, pharmacological treatment. So that combination of human contact, right? Then the trust that is generated by healthcare professionals, the pharmacological intervention, and the support of digital intervention made that the results found there were excellent in terms of smoking cessation. I've never seen that better results in the literature before, compared to this other intervention that was freely available for anyone to download without any support for onboarding the participants. So although yes, technology is always something that will enhance the human behavior change, but humans, actual humans, need to be in the loop. And that's one of the key differences that I would like to highlight as what we learned from the other parallel things done in the project.
Thank you. I completely agree. It's not the technology alone, but the combined use with other techniques that can make the difference. I agree. With regard to this, it's true that the results of the clinical trial are not as good as could be expected. I know that the candidate has elaborated some of the possible reasons for these differences, but I would like to ask you what do you think are the essential reasons for this outcome? Maybe the users' profile are not detailed enough, or maybe the user similarity is not well defined or well assessed. This is related to my following question. So, but first, I would like to know your opinion about the essential reason of this low pure results.
Yes, thank you for that question. That was surprising. The results that I got in the paper, because one would expect that a more advanced system will yield better results. However, the underlying reason for that, I think it's like twofold. First, the number of users that were actually engaged with the system was low. Mm-hmm. So although we had 371 participants, we had some users very engaged, writing many messages for a long period of time, and others only used the mobile app for 1 week, 2 weeks. So that's something that we need to work in terms of engaging the user with the enrollment process, maybe including the human factor there to explain how to use the app, and also the actual mobile app design to make it more user-friendly, let's say. That's one of the things. And then in terms of the actual system, the recommendation, although definitely, as we said before, including new parameters in the similarity calculation, we could have done different things that we don't know if they will be better or worse. I think that the key thing is to provide an easy way to complete the user profile. So even if it's a limited amount of information about the user in terms of demographics or preferences, those have to be very well completed from day one. And that will facilitate the system to start recommending better messages from the very beginning, because we also noticed that the appreciation of messages at the end was trending, at least by eye, not significantly, but there was a trend to improve in appreciation. So maybe if we have that similarity completed better and we know more about the users from the very beginning, the recommendations could start being better also from the beginning and yield better results.
Okay, thank you. So this is a good introduction for my next and last question. Maybe as a future work, of course, not for this thesis, as a future work, the behavioral model that enrich the health recommender system, maybe with the approach followed in the thesis is too inductive, let's say so. And it could be enriched by a more deductive approach based on actual data from the users. For instance, what Professor Kramers says about the physical activity, or maybe their daily living patterns or something like that, so that the messages sent to the user are best suited for the particular characteristic or I don't know. So maybe modern deep learning techniques or something that may analyze this real life data could enrich this behavioral model. What's your opinion about this?
Yes,
you may give a very short answer, please.
Okay. Yes, I totally agree, and actually, including on top of that, electronic health record information could complement the information that is proposed there. But I agree 100%.
Thank you very much. That's all. Thank you, Prorector. I'm sorry for my last.
No problem. Thank you very much, Professor Sevillano. The opposition will be continued by Professor Dexter. He is professor in the social psychology of health sciences at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. Professor Dexter.
Thank you, Director. Dear candidates, I read your thesis with great interest, and I saw a lot of qualities. A beautiful line of studies, well written, advanced statistical analysis embedded in a lot of literature. So you really seem an expert on what you do. So that's very good. Still, I have some questions. I was raised in my PhD studies with Professor de Vries as my supervisor in the old school computer tailoring. Yeah, Hein was the first in Europe, and I think I was the second, at least the first one with big projects under supervision of Hein de Vries. And we made messages actually based on the idea that you can coach an individual. And when you coach an individual, you see the person react, you listen, you see the gender. We can ask questions and then really come up with a tailored approach to this person. And we mostly use if-then statements. And once I computed one of our systems, we have made several, and it had, well, more than 1 million permutations were possible. So I thought that was rather sophisticated at that time. But now we're in different times, and you seem to really go into this new era. So, but still, my question is, because I'm really not convinced yet, what is the surplus value? What's the extra value? What is better? Is this really a new fruitful direction in being more effective by tailoring messages to the individual? Is it really an effective step? Can you explain that to me?
Yes, highly esteemed opponent, thank you very much. That's one of the key questions, recurring questions during my research of how we can improve something that was successful before with traditional computer tailoring. So I would like to highlight two key elements that differentiate health recommender system applied for behavioral change to the traditional tailoring. The first one is that in this new paradigm that we have a dynamic algorithm. That means that first we can evolve it. The algorithm evolves as the user evolves. So once the system is created and put in place, users may evolve in their patient journey. Here we are focusing on smoking cessation, which is it's fine, but also we have to consider how this could be extrapolated to other therapeutic areas, right? So maybe in smoking cessation, it's we are more short-sighted in that way because we may be looking at 1 year for smoking cessation for the intervention, but with other conditions for behavioral change, more like diet or performing physical activity, the interests of and needs of the participants will evolve over time. And with if-then-else rules, those systems will be static. And although we can elaborate them a lot, and the complexity, as you mentioned, will be very high, we could reduce that initial complexity by letting the system learn all those potential results from the permutation and combinations that you mentioned, and at the same time having the user or that the user could receive different messages across their patient journey. So
sorry, can I interrupt? So definitely. You say it's evolving. What is it therefore better tailored? Is it therefore more effective? Yes. For example, I look at one of the principle you use, and that's the let's see, it's the collective intelligence, for example. Yeah, that's one of the issues. And then it seems that you don't even use anymore, or to a limited extent, what the individual wants, but you decide what the individual wants on the basis of what others want. Yeah, so it looks like it's less tailored. You have a prejudice about the individual instead of that you assess what the individual needs. Is that true?
Partially. So it's right that assumption that we are not tailoring to the user, but based on what other users liked, but the combination of the user profile interests. So it's what makes it also compatible with the user profile of our given participant. So let me rephrase it so that it's better understood. With the first step algorithm, we first come up with all the compatible messages that will be suitable for that person. And that's now secure that any message that we send from now will be beneficial for the user. That's one part of the personalization. Then when with the similarity calculation, we also use the interest of other people, but with a similar profile. So that's the beauty of these recommender systems. And when they evolve, and by evolve mean that when they change in their interest, in their needs, the similarity calculation will also change, because we will be using other type of, or no, not other type, other neighbors, other people that now they are similar to the user profile. Yeah,
that's an interesting thing. And you mentioned several times the user profile. Could you please read proposition 2? Could you please read it? Do you have it at hand?
Not.
Oh, okay, that's all right. I will read it. Yeah, it says, well, you've written it, so you know. Health recommender systems do not need to acquire extended user profile to provide relevant personalized advice. What do you mean by that?
Yes, with that,
please give a short answer.
Okay, so one of the goals of recommender systems is that you don't need to complete extensive questionnaires about your persona, but the system can learn about you over time. So by relying on the collective intelligence and also the ratings that you are constantly giving without having to complete your own profile, the system is capable to learn what is most relevant for you.
Thank you. I give the word back to the pro-rector.
Thank you, Professor Dexter. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Peterson. He is Associate Professor of Health, Psychology and Technology at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. Dr. Peterson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, first of all, let me say I'm honored to be part of this ceremony and invited to have a seat in this committee. And let me also, of course, make my compliments to the work that you have done. So I fully confirm the complimentary words of Mr. Dexter on this, that I can see that this is quite groundbreaking work that you did. And with that, of course, comes a lot of issues that are still, well, underexplored, so we don't really know how things work. So that gives a lot of difficulties, of course. And in particular here, this is really cross-disciplinary science. And I really applaud the way that you and your team have done this and taken up this ambitious endeavor, I would say. And with that, we learn a lot. So I was really interested by your thesis to read it. And during this discussion, we already tried to talk a bit about the possible explanations for the lack of effectiveness, so to say, of the hybrid system. So this is about the chapter 5 study, of course. And I would be really pleased to discuss with you a bit of some of the details there. And one of the first things that drew my attention was how you try to explain that on the level of engagement of users, we don't see the superior effects of the hybrid system as we would have expected. And so the explanation that you are writing about in your discussion is that we didn't look at perceived trust as a characteristic of messages. I mean, to me, that seemed a bit like a wild guess, so to say. I thought, well, that's a bit far-fetched, but perhaps you can convince me otherwise and explain a bit to me why you came up with that as a factor.
Yes, thank you for your question, esteemed opponent. Actually, the perceived trust is one of the elements that is being more and more researched in recommender systems now. They are known as trust-aware recommender systems. So the trust is not only how users trust on the messages that they receive, that could be, for instance, enhanced by signing the message by a healthcare professional that they know, but also on the relationship between users. So, for instance, if I'm getting a message that someone else in another part of the world with a similar profile for me found useful, that's fine. But perhaps I will appreciate it even more, and I will engage with the user more if I know that a friend that I know also benefited from that message. So I relate with the system much more as again, the human component is brought in the system. So that's in terms of perceived trust. There were other reasons that I mentioned that could be the rationale for having those results. And I don't know if you want that I comment about them.
No,
or
perhaps
just,
perhaps I can continue with that last point that you mentioned. Okay. So it basically, to me, then perceived trust seems more like either on system level, a variable. So as usually to begin with, you need to trust the whole system the way that it is using data to provide messages in the end. Or it is on the level of, so it's not on the content of the messages really, the perceived trust. I guess. Is that true?
You know, it will be both.
Mm-hmm.
In the recommender systems area, when we refer to trust-aware recommender systems, it's about the relationship between users. But here we also applied to the trust on the actual benefit that they could get, who wrote that message, the quality of the message. If there is someone with a reputation sending those messages.
Okay, but forgive me if I perhaps do not understand it still yet fully. So, but then I don't see how the hybrid system could result in a higher prevalence of, let's say, low perceived trust messages than the knowledge-based system. So, what could explain then the difference in prevalence? How does that work?
Yes. So here the thing is that we didn't include this as part of a meta feature. So trust was not considered in our system. If we had considered it, that trust element will be one of the factors determining what message should be sent. So messages that will rate high in terms of trust will be sent to the user, or not directly, but they will be part of the calculation to recommend the selection of the message.
Okay, but now it becomes interesting. So in terms of the operational aspect, how could we do that then? How do you build in such a thing in algorithm? Could you give some examples there?
Yes, definitely. So let's say that we can build a network of people that know each other, like friends, or we can connect with Facebook and see when there is a message that is sent, if that message has been rated by someone that is known by the user. And in that case, we can say this message was also rated with 4 stars by John Smith, your friend John Smith, and in that way, the user will know it. And in terms of computation, that's it's like a simple approach, including that relation of users, the network of contacts, and in the database also including if that message was rated or read by this other person.
Looking at a prorector for a second, do I still have? Okay, well then perhaps it's a good moment to end my discussion, and thanks again for enlightening me on this. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. The next opponent is Dr. Smit. She is Associate Professor in Health Communication at the University of Amsterdam. Dr. Smit.
Thank you. Well, dear PhD candidate, well, first of all, as the others also emphasized, I'd like to congratulate you and also your team on this interesting piece of work. It has been a real pleasure reading it, and it really reflects what I think must have been an extremely challenging project that aimed to bring about innovation in the computer tailoring field. And well, actually, innovation might be your middle name, because while we are presenting here presently or Zooming like we've never done otherwise, I can well recall you being one of the first giving a virtual conference presentation about this particular work just a little more than 2 years ago. But of course, I would like to exchange some ideas with you as well. And particularly because in the introduction of your thesis, you mentioned that rule-based expert systems that are commonly used for computer tailoring have several limitations. One being that these systems cannot self-learn, so they are not smart, and that high levels of personalization require obtaining data to create a set of rules through many questions, which results in high user burden, reduced engagement, and also elevated dropout rates. And indeed, you seem to find that the more questions are answered by a respondent, the more quit attempts are made among people in the hybrid algorithm condition. In other words, when the system was provided with more information to personalized recommendations, more success was obtained. And this contradicts your expectation that health recommender systems may not need to depend on asking so many questions. And you also recognize that in the general discussion of your thesis, where you describe some suggestions of how to decrease the user burden of questionnaire completion. You mentioned, for instance, to create chunks of questions that can be answered at different points in time. Still, for optimal success, all questions would need to be answered, and I think many people would still perceive this as quite burdensome. Therefore, I wonder whether you may have thought of alternative ways to gather the required information from your participants, instead of relying on self-report measures. So happy if you could reflect on that.
Thank you for your question, esteemed opponent. I think that that's a real challenging question, and definitely one of the things that we need to include in the recommendation is the automatization of data streams. We have been using questionnaires, but previously we mentioned the usage of wearable devices to input data, but that's more at a physical level. There are other things that could be extracted from actual technology, like electronic health record information. That's a more medical information. But what about the perceptions or interests? That's like a new field to explore. That will be how to use the digital digital profile that we have on the internet. Let's say using the social media, what pages I explore, all those things related to the cookies, all that information, to collect that information and extract it and use it in our recommender system. Of course, this has the drawback of privacy issues. How to collect all that information without being too intrusive, and also without having some or that the user may perceive that as like a total intrusion in their life. So having the trade-off between what the user wants to provide about them and what information will be actually useful for the system to work, is where we should be right in the center. So I don't know if I have answered your question. Just to summarize, I think that there are some alternatives for data streams to avoid having these questionnaires for the patients, but also other new approaches could be included by getting the most of the social media and the digital impact that each of us have in the internet.
Yeah, just to thank you for your extensive answer, but just to follow up on that, if we were to measure perceptions based on our browsing histories or our social media profiles, how would you measure, well, as you base your intervention on the iChange model, a concept like attitude or self-efficacy?
That's a good question, and I didn't have time to explain during my presentation. So all the things that we know about users can be applied in two ways. One, for the similarity calculation, just to see what's or who is similar to me, and this is where we could exploit this information, and also we could use it for the actual generation of messages. So in this case, we will only use it for the similarity calculation, where we don't need to include any of these details. If you are your political alienation or your preferences, that doesn't have to be included in the message, but still will be relevant to calculate if you are similar to other users or not.
Okay, yes, I'll take that for an answer. Thank you. I'll give the word back to the prolector.
Thank you, Dr. Smit. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Unema. She is Associate Professor of Health Promotion at Maastricht University. Dr. Unema.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidates, I also want to start with congratulating you with your dissertation, and also congratulations to your supervisory team. It's a very impressive piece of work, and I think you did a very nice job in moving the field of the health recommender systems forward. And what I really like is what you do, what you try to do is to combine the technological field with the behavior change field, and that's a direction that we have to move toward in the future. And also we need people like you who have experience in both fields. And I also want to compliment you on your attempt to really combine these fields. Your dissertation also provides a good ground for discussion, like we have seen already so far. And what I would like to discuss with you is the chapters that you devoted to developing and recommend a system based on new behavior change theory insights. In chapter 2 of your dissertation, you clearly demonstrate there's a high need of interventions that incorporate much more behavior change insights and behavior change techniques. And you attempted to do that and describe that in chapter 3. In the discussion of that chapter, you state that your paper describes how a behavior change model can be applied to the algorithm and of the health recommender system. But that statement puzzled me a little bit, because what I read in the chapter is that you use theory and behavior change techniques in the messages. That's very clear. You also have messages for all the important determinants that are identified in the change model. But it was not so clear to me how the theory was included in the algorithm. So can you please explain more about that?
Thank you for your question, esteemed opponent. So we go back again to the similarity concept. If we take a look to the model that I chose for integrating it in the recommender system, the iChange model, we know that there are different phases, and for the actual intervention, we chose 2 of them, where the participants willing to quit smoking will be motivation and action. And the determinants of change within those phases were then taken and used for the design of the messages, as you have correctly mentioned, but also used as meta features for the similarity calculation. So that means that when the system is running, we are the system checks the let's say the matches between what what a message with such a meta feature has, and the user that has a meta feature have as well. So by doing that matching, we can embed the determinants of change in the algorithm. It's part of the process for selecting the similarity calculation. Not for selecting the similarity calculation, sorry, for selecting the messages using the similarity calculation for users. Yeah. I don't know if that's clear, or perhaps should I elaborate a bit more?
No, thank you. That makes it more clear, because I did not, well, I had not read that in your article. But then, yeah, so you make basically 2, a pre-motivational stage and a post-motivational phase where people can be in. Is that correct?
Not exactly. So anyone downloading a mobile app to quit smoking will at least be aware of their need to stop smoking. That's why we excluded the first phase. And then they will be either just considering that, yes, this is something, let's explore what's out there about smoking cessation, and or actually trying to quit. So that's why we chose those 2 elements. And then the post one, like let's say once the behavior is achieved, it's out of the scope of the intervention that I designed.
Yeah, but yeah, so that there are 2 categories basically. Yes. But then you also said that people go through a patient journey, and based on that, well, I would assume that all individuals will go in a different way through that patient journey. And that's also what the theory says, that you have to really adapt information to the situation that the person is in at that moment. So how can you take that into account? Or maybe how you did it now, or how it can be improved in the future?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. In our case, well, what I did is to combine all together, because they're not totally separate phases. The determinants of change may also affect the other areas, maybe with less intensity, but they will all be useful for the user in this regard. However, in future work, what we can implement is expiring windows of time. So what was useful 1 month ago is less relevant than what is useful for me today, for instance. And in that way, we can transition and move forward in the patient journey. And then the system automatically will be following this pattern of different phases, where some determinants of change stop having that much importance with a decay on the weight that we have in the calculation for similarity and the selection of the messages.
Okay, thank you. So for the future, would you continue with the way that you have implemented it now? Or would you say, well, if I could do it again, or if I start on a new project, I will do some things different? And what would you do different?
In terms of the actual algorithm design, I will remain everything the same, but I will change the meta features. I will add some meta features that are more relevant, or that seems to be more relevant now that we have the results, and some others will be dropped. So, for instance, the economical level, or socio-economical level of the participants could be a valuable addition to the system. But other meta features, thinking if it's a single or if it's living with someone else, maybe not that relevant in this case. So what I will adjust is the meta feature definition to start improving the system, because there are so many variables to touch that we have to fix some of them, touch one, and see if there is a improvement in the performance of the system.
Okay, thank you. I'm also from the old school of computer tailoring, and maybe I also have old ideas in that. But I think what we always thought was very important in the computer tailoring is that you assess information from the participants and keep them involved. So my thoughts are also going into, is it possible to assess new things from the participants in a very easy way, to be able also to give more in the moment information and advice that they would need?
Yes, so if I understand correctly, what you're saying, you are asking is how we can.
I'm quite sure, Mr. Hors-Fraile, that you have seen and heard that the time for defending your thesis has passed. The committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and the quality in particular of your defense, and I request you to await our return with the results of our deliberation. Dear, dear Mr. Hors-Fraile, the degree committee has, here present, has assessed the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense today. And in view of this positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. And that is not just a normal, usual doctor, but it is a double degree issued by the Maastricht University and the University of Seville. And Professor De Vries is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch and Spanish university custom and law. And I invite your supervisor to take the floor. Professor De Vries.
Thank you, Prorector. Well, we start with a question first. Santiago Hors-Fraile, do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
Then, by the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present online, I hereby confer upon you, Santiago Hors-Fraile, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. And as evidence of this, you will soon receive the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the supervisor, affixed with the official seal of the university, and that's now shown by the beadle. Well,
thank you.
Big compliments. Okay, I will continue with the laudatio. Dear Santiago, dear doctor, I think you can be very proud of yourself. Well done. It's actually a pity that we cannot meet in person now. But you know, I've seen you talk and defending, and I think this is very much in line with how you are. Very motivated, very in touch with your topic. And we first met during the summer university course on health promotion and health communication that I used to teach almost every year. And this course was in 2016. And I remember sitting in the canteen of a sports building, and somehow the topic of doing a thesis in Maastricht came on our plate. I guess because I mentioned I was also collaborating with the University of Seville with another faculty, and that someone was doing a double PhD. Well, you decided to do this as well. And that became a very interesting journey for all of us. I did not know too much about recommender systems, and you did not know too much about health behavior models. So it was an interesting mix. And what I remember most from our first meeting was your energy and enthusiasm. And I think, you know, that could be seen today as well. And that's also something that you really needed during this journey, because there were many challenges. And the enthusiasm that you shared was something that you shared with your supervisor, Luis Fernandez Luque. And the two of you always had very interesting, sometimes wild ideas. For instance, me coming over to Dubai to help you with a project in diabetes, or to come with you to Taiwan. Well, I like the kind of spirit that people know me also recognize that. It gives me energy, and we could share our enthusiasm very often, which also resulted, I think, in many fruitful conversations. Sometimes you were also a bit too enthusiastic, too fast. And consequently, Francine and I then had to use our breaks in order to invite you to focus a little bit more carefully about various things, explaining things more in detail. And luckily, this never resulted in anger or stubbornness. And sometimes actually, you know, I could have imagined that you could have been a little bit reluctant. For instance, the last part, the analysis of the data, that really was challenging. Now, remember us sitting in Seville looking at these complicated Excel sheets with data, how to merge bits and pieces, and you sometimes then immediately call to your software guy to help you out. Well, that was a really challenging part. But there were also other challenging moments. And so, for instance, when you were reanalyzing the data with Matt Kandel, I really admire your energy that worked out. And I also thank Matt for helping you out over there. So it's an impressive work of peace that you've been doing that. You're not only doing that, for those of you know your Instagram posts, you also know that you like to combine science with working out. Well, I think that combination also worked out very well here. Well, this PhD journey has now come to an end. I do hope we can keep in touch with each other. I'll be visiting Seville, and hopefully we can then catch up. And this PhD was a team effort. So I definitely want to thank Luis, Francine, Anton, and Matt for their support. So Santiago, I thank you for signing up as a PhD student, collaborating with me, and making this a very interesting and a successful journey, a journey that I will actually be missing. I also want to congratulate your parents. Padres de Santiago, no sé si ustedes han entendido mucho de la presentación de su hijo, pero Santiago ha acabado un trabajo muy maravilloso. Ustedes pueden estar sumamente orgullosos de su hijo. Sé que esos son momentos especiales para ustedes. Espero que ambos disfruten de su hijo con buena salud durante mucho tiempo. Entonces, muchísimas felicidades a ustedes y, por supuesto, naturalmente, muchísimas felicidades a ti, Santiago. Okay, and I'll give the word to Francine, and then afterwards, Luis will also say some words.
Yes, thank you very much, Hein. Dear Santiago, I'm happy that I'm also allowed to speak a few words to you. And when looking at you during the last hour, I couldn't help thinking about our collaboration during the last few years. And if I was asked to use one word to describe this entire journey, then I think extremely intense would be it. And I know this is basically two words, but that's also only due to you, because you are simply more than intense. So extremely intense would be that word. And why, you might wonder? Because you operate with extreme intensity. And let me give some examples. You worked hard, extremely hard, and with dedication in your company. You have worked extremely hard on designing and executing all these studies that are in your dissertation, partly in your dissertation. And you always did that in collaboration with a huge team of experts from all over the world. Hein already named a few countries that you were in the last few years. And you've also worked like crazy to grasp all the statistics, doing and overdoing all types of analysis, which even costed or resulted in changing an entire paper, even changing your dissertation, which was already approved, postponing the defense and resubmitting the optimized thesis to the committee. You've also worked really extremely hard on trying to grasp our field of behavioral science, a field that was totally new to you, and a field that Hein and I have really tried to stimulate you to get to know better. And I know for sure that sometimes you must have perceived us as annoying. I really hope that we have convinced you of the importance of this understanding and about the unique and I think added value of you mastering both fields of expertise right now. Furthermore, you also worked extremely hard to constantly explain that other field to me and all types of technical things to me. I was never involved, to be honest, in a project in which I knew so little. You used terms that were totally new to me. You talked about all types of aspects of the recommender system, which I never heard of, and it took me days to understand. You even sent me files in a way that is always new to me. The nice thing, though, is that only based on my facial expression, you know that I don't understand. And then your huge smile appears, and then you look at me and you say with your Spanish accent, okay, allow me to just explain. It is really easy. And to be honest, it was never easy. And even when you visited the department and was involved in our pizza night, playing Cards Against Humanity, you were all in, extremely in, doing your best to win. And Hein already mentioned the sport. You were always giving it all, practicing like crazy. You were constantly participating in games, so always high intensity. And also, last but definitely not least, your personal circumstances are also really intense at the moment. And I have nothing but admiration and respect for the way you also try to handle these. So people listening to this talk, they must think, well, a person cannot do all these things with that high intensity at the same time. And they are actually right. Sometimes it was impossible for you to juggle, and you had difficulties in dealing with all these issues and all the people that required your attention and dedication, and to prioritize these. And my honest opinion is that I don't know whether you have mastered the skill of prioritizing after this PhD project. But then on the other hand, I also think this is what makes you, you. So I hope that you can and will do a lot of things in life with that same intensity, but maybe just start today with celebrating this milestone with extreme intensity. So congratulations, I'm proud of you, and I wish you and your loved ones a good day, and make sure to make it a good one. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Enhorabuena, Santiago, y enhorabuena a vuestra familia. Voy a cambiar un poquitín inglés, luego hablaré un poquitín más en castellano para que nos entiendan todos. If I have one word for describing your PhD journey, is actually resilience. This has been a very challenging project. I remember we got the European project Smoke Free Brain, and then I asked you, do you want to do a PhD about it? You had no clue about the smoking cessation. You had no clue about behavioral change. And I think you didn't even know what was a recommender system. Then we saw that the European project was very complex to do a PhD. Some partners trying to find out how to get ethical approval for using vaping in mice. And we just found the solution. Let's get a partner in Taiwan, and you do this research in Taiwan. You flew over Taiwan. You didn't know how to eat in there. Your healthy food. So I've been always a challenge, learning new things. And I am very thankful from all the support from the University of Maastricht to embrace technology, but without forgetting the foundation on the behavioral change. At any challenge, you actually saw an opportunity to grow personally and professionally. And that has been actually resulting in a very good interdisciplinary dissertation when you have learned actually quite a lot. And at the end of the day, we should be very happy that the technology that you are working on actually is helping people. And that's actually was the main motivation of your hard work. And resilience is the key, which is also something I had learned from my friend from psychology. And you already had it. You just master and keep improving all the time. So I am very proud of you, very proud of the team of co-supervisors that we have put together. And we should be very proud of your family that have been supporting you and helping you not to lose the focus on all the process with the up and down. And I guess it was also a very intensive journey for them to see how you were doing some PhD. Now you are in Taiwan, now you are here. It's a little bit complex. I will switch to Spanish just to say que tanto Antón como yo, como todos los supervisores, estamos muy orgullosos del trabajo de Santiago. Ha sido un honor no solamente ver cómo Santiago ha aprendido y ha hecho una tesis excelente en psicología, comunicación en salud y tecnología, sino también cómo nosotros hemos aprendido de Santiago cómo iba sobrepasando todos los problemas con un montón de resiliencia y haciéndose un mejor investigador, una mejor persona con todos los problemas, hasta llegar ahora al culmen de ser doctor Santiago Hors-Fraile. Enhorabuena.
Thank you for your kind words.
Bueno, Santiago, yo después de lo que te han dicho los demás supervisores, pues poco te tengo que decir. Evidentemente, darte la enhorabuena por un trabajo muy bueno y darle la enhorabuena también a tu familia. Let me switch to English also. Santiago, this has been a very long journey and you have had to do a lot of efforts, but the results, I think, were really worth it. So we are very proud of you. And I am very happy that we can welcome today you as a doctorate, as a doctor, not a doctorate. And that's really all I have to say after all the other supervisors have already told. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you all.
Esteemed Dr. Hors-Fraile, dear Santiago, it's my great pleasure to congratulate you with your double doctorate from the University of Seville and Maastricht University. and the honor that you have acquired with that. I do that also on behalf of the Board of Deans of Maastricht University. If you allow me, I would like to share some impressions in the committee. Well, we have enjoyed your very clear summary, but also reading we enjoyed reading your thesis, and we were impressed by it, and in particular by the reflective elements in your discussions. In your defense, we have seen, let's say, to say it in a few words, an open, an honest, a clear, a fluid, and a mature impression of your defense. And you have also shown that you are knowledgeable and convincing in your scientific field. And I would like to congratulate you and your 4 supervisors with this result that we have seen today. So I congratulate Professor De Vries, Dr. Schneider, Dr. Fernandez-Luque, and Dr. Sivit Baisel with this result that we have seen in your thesis and in your defense today. I include, of course, in my congratulations, your family, and in particular, your parents and other members of your family, and your colleagues and friends, and all those who have contributed and your defense that we have seen today. And I wish you a successful professional career and a happy personal life. Before I conclude with this ceremony, I would like to thank all the members of the Thesis Assessment Committee and the Degree Committee. And in particular, I would like to thank the external members and all opponents for their questions and interesting academic discussions. Maastricht University appreciates your contributions. And hereby, I close this academic ceremony.
Thank you.